Today, I want to get into an issue with JHope and his dancers. We also need to talk about people believing that JHope shaved his head and is going to the military soon. And then we have to get into a clip of JHope at the salon chair. So hey Dumplings, this is Dave. Decide hater or not, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell on. Go right with Dumplings, hey spling mug merch, and let's go. JHope was recently seen on a salon chair getting his hair and makeup done, and people have a lot to say about this. This is actually really funny and a cute moment that I want to address. JHope recently, to close off this album, releasing JHope in the Box. His album is called Jack in the Box, so JHope in the Box is supposed to represent him coming out of the box to reveal who he is. You can stream the documentary on Weverse as well as Disney+. During this documentary, we see many moments from behind the scenes of JHope in the makeup chair, even moments where he gets his hair done. And then of course more music related stuff like dance practice and performance practice, all of which we will get into a little bit more later. But there was a screen grab that ended up going viral from a clip where we see JHope at the salon. The makeup artist was getting very close and working on JHope's eye makeup, since JHope has a bit more of a punk vibe to Jack in the Box, or at least some of the songs. Of course, things like eye makeup would be necessary during performances. This was such a funny clip and screen grab because all of the comments were basically asking how this stylist or makeup artist was even still alive. And I get it. How is it possible to be alive when looking directly into JHope's eyes? Some even joked that the process in which to get hired by HYBE must be that the hiring staff shows the potential new hire a bunch of really steamy BTS pics, and if the new hire does not die or pass out, then they are hired. I think this is so funny, and of course not really what happened. I think a lot of makeup artists in the industry don't really get starstruck like that. There was even an article that recently published where a K-pop makeup artist and hairstylist explained why the likelihood of them dating the idol they work with and also falling in love with them is very unlikely. We can also assume the idea of being starstruck and fainting when standing close to the members to be true too. I want to start off by saying, of course, it would be easy to assume the idols date their stylists. Stylists and makeup artists are very pretty, as you would expect, and if the idol dates them, it would fall under the radar since it was staff. And since the idol has no time to actually go on dates or meet people, this is the perfect way to do that. However, when a makeup artist came out and really talked about this to say that being around the idol is a lot less romantic than you might think, one specific example talks about when artists release a new album, the entire staff may only get a few hours of sleep. This is expected because the staff has to follow the artist around from all the press that they do to any performances that they do, and of course any music videos that the idol is trying to do. And the industry is interesting because when things happen, they happen all at once and all together, and sometimes that's all in one day, sleep not included. So of course in a situation like this, you really don't have time to feel any romantic feelings or even feelings of love. You are probably a little slightly annoyed at everyone on set because you're tired and maybe hungry, I don't know. It can never get to a point where romantic energy can build and all that. A lot of makeup artists stay with the company and the boys since debut, and oftentimes the boys are underage at that time, so the makeup artist could feel like their mother and never really develop that romantic attraction. The makeup artist talks about how sometimes you'll see the idols sleep, or in more compromising moments, you might think that they're really pretty or handsome, but when you see them in those moments, you realize they're just normal or maybe not as attractive as you thought. And that applies to everyone, including BTS. We all have moments where we look bad. The makeup and stylist job is to minimize those moments. And I'm sure the people who work around BTS see the boys as family. The documentary JHope in the Box is supposed to give a close look into what JHope's journey was when he was creating the album and even performing his song. Throughout this documentary, JHope shows the Lollapalooza performance and the process behind the scenes. Of course, the documentary shows the dancers and the dance practice. There was a moment where JHope was backstage and the choreographer showed a recorded footage of the dancers at dance practice. JHope seemed mildly disappointed when he looked at the footage and felt like the dancing was not up to par. He basically said, "I don't like this." The footage is translated from Korean to English, and it seemed like the general consensus is that JHope was not fully content with it. Something that got a bit controversial was when people noticed that there were two translations that were available, and one of them seemed semi-misleading, or at least the fans claimed this. The moment that was translated on Disney Plus showed JHope saying, "They're not coming together, I don't see any chemistry between them." This was definitely a big deal deal when the clip came out. People felt like those words were quite scary and showed JHope in a very strict light. Of course, it's not bad that JHope is strict and people were not calling JHope rude, but even in a situation like this, when JHope is aware the cameras are rolling, would he not have a nicer way of saying things? Weverse is a platform that is run by HYBE, so they have their own in-house editor and translator that is likely going to translate to be more honest and be more on brand with what the boys might typically say, but also even things that don't exactly translate culturally. For example, in China, it's not necessarily seen as rude to push someone out of the way without saying excuse me or whatever. It's not really seen as a big deal, at least not many years ago. Same action translated here in the US was always seen as a bad thing. And so if people translate almost exactly what is said from Korean to English, it could come across more blunt and rude, whereas it's not rude over there. So even JHope saying this line about them not having chemistry could be a line that is not necessarily something the dancers over there would take personally. However, it was believed that on Weverse, they translate JHope's moment to say, we're really not that in sync. Should I say we're not very close? This implies a different meaning completely to just JHope saying we need more time to practice, as opposed to the Disney translation, which implies the dancers are just bad. So this also goes into what I say a lot, which is take translations with a grain of salt. Sometimes they do give you a great idea as to what is being said, but other times, as you can see, the translation could be entirely off. And I'm more inclined to believe the Weverse version might be the more accurate one. But JHope in the Box has not been the only new content that we have seen of JHope, and this new piece of content actually destroyed the internet. The members, or at least a good chunk of them, decided to go visit Jin at the military. I think Jin had a bit of a break, and RM, Jungkook, JHope, and Suga actually went to visit. They all took a beautiful picture together, and they all looked super good. We were all so happy to see Jin being okay and doing really well. Jin has been very good about updating every month and stopping in to say hi with some pre-recorded content. And a lot of ARMYs are praising how committed he has been to keeping up with us so ARMYs don't miss him too much. Of course, going back to the photo, we are missing Taeyang and Jimin here. However, that is likely not because they didn't want to go, but simply might be because Jimin is doing his solo stuff right now, and Taeyang might be in the process of that and could also just not be in Korea right now. However, after this photo dropped, the conversation of the military, and specifically JHope's military enlistment, began to be a topic of conversation. When is JHope going, and is Jin almost done? I know the Jin almost done topic is a strange one to ask because obviously not, but viewers were hoping that since we saw a photo of him that he is getting ready to leave. But JHope has talked about enlisting soon, and if you are not aware, JHope recently removed his file to postpone the military service, and thus he could start at any moment since he is at that age that he needs to enlist. JHope went on a stream recently to very quickly address that he has gotten his papers to enlist and can't say what date, but will be enlisting at any day. Of course, this is very emotional for the boys, and I can totally see this being a bit of a burden for the fandom. Now, going back to the photo with Jin and the crew, why was this being brought up after that photo was posted? Well, people were wondering, since we see JHope in a hat, is JHope bald now and has he begun shaving his head? People were asking on social media for JHope to take off the hat so we could see, and others just simply believe that it is already shaved and he is just hiding it because maybe this photo is supposed to be about Jin and not JHope. Because obviously if JHope did shave his head and it was shown in this photo, it would take headlines away from Jin. But also, like, if JHope did shave his head, he definitely should save that news for a separate video and for a separate time so that moment can have its own moment. Now, I do want to debunk the idea that JHope's hair is shaved, because if you simply look right at the back of JHope's head in that photo, you'll see hair there. So unless JHope shaved the entire top part but then just left the back bottom, then his hair would not be shaved in this photo. Interestingly enough, I think we still have a little bit of time before we see him shave his head. I don't think it'll happen right now since he can't say the date, but it is believed that once the idol receives the notice, they actually have a few weeks before they have to report to the camp. So JHope still has time, and I think he is going to wait a full few weeks. Let me know what you think. Make sure you check out my Patreon for more videos, link down below. Thanks, just leave a comment right here. Love you, bye.